Engineer Gold Mines is focused on the exploration and development of the historic high-grade Engineer Gold Mine situated 32 kilometers southwest of Atlan, British Columbia. Engineer Gold Mines is fully permitted for surface and underground exploration with the drill program now underway. Engineer Gold Mines Limited trades on the TSX Venture Exchange, symbol EAU. For more information, please visit us at engineergoldmines.com.
You're listening to HowStreet.com radio, available online at TalkDigitalNetwork.com. Welcome to HowStreet.com radio, the online source for market opinions. Here is Jim Goddard.
My guest is Sean Brodrick, senior editor at WeissRatings.com. He's speaking to us from Florida. Welcome back to the show, Sean.
Thank you so much for having me on, Jim.
Sean, what's going on with oil? It's charging ever higher at a time of year when usually it's going down.
I know, isn't it crazy? And like everyone keeps saying that it's going to go down. I think they're wrong. Of course, that's the way that I'm placing my bets. So you have to figure that I'm talking my book a little bit. But here's the thing. I mean, we've seen surging demand coming out of the pandemic, which is enhanced by the fact that people are going back to work, so they need to drive more and all that stuff. And that's really pumping up demand. On the supply side, some companies were actually put out of business during the pandemic. You know, they just couldn't make the loan payments. They're out. They're gone. And the new drilling just hasn't really picked up. Now, that's just the U.S., sure. And there is OPEC and OPEC Plus. There's the original OPEC, and then OPEC Plus is adding in Russia and the so-called non-aligned nations that it leads. But those guys have actually been very disciplined about raising their production. They aren't cheating nearly as much as we think they would or as they did in the past. So we're actually getting a supply-demand squeeze. I am expecting oil to hit $80 this summer.
And, of course, recreational vehicle sales have gone off the charts in both Canada and the U.S., with people expecting to hit the road. I don't know if they've ever gassed up a motorhome before, but I can tell you it certainly will make your eyes water.
They're about to find out. In fact, funny enough, my wife and I took a little time to look at a recreational vehicle this past weekend, and they have so few that they're not willing to make any deals whatsoever, even on the used ones. Which, now, I think that'll pass. You know, I mean, as you say, there are downsides to the recreational vehicle lifestyle. And we're already seeing the peak in things like lumber and the industrial metals, so I think that's for a different reason. The peaks in something that is convincing Wall Street that the inflationary surge is over. I believe they're terribly wrong, and they're going to find that out for sure. I think things will come back down. So the initial panic is over. We'll have the heat come off on some things a bit, but then we'll get a gradual or maybe not so gradual inflationary upsurge and all sorts of things which are in high demand now that we're exiting a pandemic.
Have you any idea if there's a shipping container shortage? I heard China is trying to hog them to itself, and so shipping containers that normally would come to North America with goods in them sit empty for a while, and we send agricultural goods back to China. Well, they're just snatching them up and taking them home empty.
Well, I had that same story sent to me. I find that hard to believe. I know one thing China is doing, which is dumping industrial metals from its stockpiles into the market. And it's doing that to try and drive down the price of copper, aluminum, and other metals which it imports quite a lot. And the reason it's doing that is because they want to import more, but at cheaper prices. So they're trying to break the weak hands of the bulls right now. And so that's one of the factors driving industrial metal prices lower right now, is that China's selling into the market. You know, how long will this continue? I don't know. But nothing goes up in a straight line. And it was an incredible move in industrial metals anyway. So I agree things are pulling back. Unlike Wall Street, I don't think that it's over. I just think we're having an ordinary correction in a bull market. And so after a while, and probably sooner than later, we're going to see those metals head higher again. Right along with energy. Energy is a massive part of the inflation equation, right? Because as the economy heats up, people use more energy, which drives up demand, and so that sends energy prices higher. But since those energy prices get put into the system for everybody who's manufacturing and mining everything, well, that means that prices have to go higher on the other end too. So keep your eye on energy and see what happens with it. That'll give you a good idea of what's going to happen with inflation, I think.
Well, when I talked to the BC Independent Contractors Association, they said the U.S. isn't the only one feeling the pinch when it comes to the increasing cost of building a home. The cost of building a Canadian apartment unit went up over $16,000 because of lumber and steel prices. So yeah. I know some people were thinking, why use lumber to frame your house? How about steel? Well, steel's gone up as well.
Yeah, as I said, there are adjustments to make in that market. We are seeing the price of lumber come down. Probably the price of steel will come down too, because some of the buying was speculation. But we just had new U.S. wholesale prices come out today, and wholesale inflation surged 6.6% year over year. That's the biggest gain since 2009, and the only reason it's since 2009 is that's when they remade the index. So they can't go back any further. So basically it's the biggest year-over-year surge they've seen since they started keeping this particular kind of measure. So,
and of course, in Canada and the U.S., the official CPI doesn't include housing or energy prices.
Well, the core doesn't, yeah. I mean, just headline does. And so, you know, I mean, the point I was going to make about wholesale inflation is that manufacturers will absorb those costs for only a little while before they pass those on to consumers. And so that's yet another thing that's going to help pump up consumer prices. And so that gets the whole wheel rolling faster and faster and faster, you know? So I think there's a lot more inflation to come. The initial panic is over. We're seeing some pullback from that. That's fine. Nothing goes up in a straight line. There's another surge coming. You should probably position yourself for that.
Well, it goes up in a straight line if you're Bernie Madoff.
Yeah, well, we saw how things worked out for him.
We'll have more with Sean Brodrick right after this.
Media recognition from Bloomberg, Reuters, recycling trade publications, patented process for 100% recovery of critical metals, including cobalt, lithium, nickel, manganese, aluminum. American Manganese is focused on recycling lithium-ion batteries for electric vehicles. American Manganese trades on the TSX Venture, AMY, the US, AMYZF, and Frankfurt 2AM. For more information, visit AmericanManganeseInc.com or phone me, Larry Ray, at 778-574-4444.
Don't miss out. Stay informed. Receive the HowStreet.com weekly recap with thought-provoking podcasts, radio, and articles delivered to your inbox. Sign up for the HowStreet.com weekly recap on our homepage at HowStreet.com.
Welcome back. We're speaking with Sean Brodrick. Sean, what's going on in uranium?
That's a good question. I mean, we had news over the weekend that there was a leak at a Chinese nuclear power plant, which potentially could be bad. And it was the French company running that plant that actually reached out to the U.S. and said, hey, this is a problem. Well, the U.S. began to monitor it, and then later on, China said it's not a problem. However, on Monday, we saw uranium stocks really take it in the knees. I mean, they went down hard because, you know, we've seen this kind of story play out before, but it was just a one-day pullback. All the uranium stocks are up again today. I guess that people believe the Chinese story, which means that there must have been some verification of it, because no one's going to believe anything the Chinese say on face value. So that was a good pullback, a nice opportunity to buy if you weren't long yet, and people should really see it that way. the longer term story is that, we have a big supply-demand squeeze, and we're having government support for uranium in all sorts of ways. Now, one thing that the U.S. government will not be doing is back during the Trump administration, they talked about building a strategic uranium reserve. Team Biden says they're not going to do that. So that's out, but they're still going to get tax credits. They're still going to make it part of their green energy solution and all that stuff. So there's still, in the U.S. anyway, many things looking up for uranium, for nuclear power. It's a good place to invest right now.
What's going on in the cannabis space?
Terrible day. Trying to figure that one out because all the fundamentals look so good. Maybe it's part of the shift from growth to value that we're seeing in the market, which is due to inflation. During an inflationary cycle, value stocks tend to outperform growth stocks because people want their money today, they don't want it tomorrow. Maybe that's one reason that we're seeing marijuana stocks down. Maybe it's just a normal market rotation. Hard to say. But, it's not any fun being in cannabis right now, but looking at the longer term picture, there's just such growth potential. And this is all before it gets legalized. Once it gets legalized, we're going to see consolidation within that industry like nobody's seen, because now, while it's illegal, the big companies don't dare buy it, there's too many legal implications of them owning something that's federally illegal. Also, those companies can't use federally insured U.S. banks, so that's really hampering their business. Plus, they can't list on the major exchanges here in the U.S. That's why only Canadian marijuana companies list on the U.S. exchanges, because in Canada, marijuana is federally legal. There's a bunch of things holding cannabis back right now. I believe that changes when legalization comes along, and despite the fact that they're being held back, the growth in not only revenue, but earnings for U.S. multi-state operators is enormous. So, I think things look good. The market disagrees with me short term. I bet it's only short term. We'll see how it works out.
Do you look at things like hotels, casinos, cruise lines?
Well, funny enough, I spent the weekend in Orlando speaking at the Orlando Money Show. I'm not talking about the stocks, but I'm talking about the actual hotel. It was packed. Jam-packed. And no one was wearing a mask. Of course, that is Orlando. But it was, I think that, that looks strong right now. It's a strong industry. We've already seen those stocks bounce back quite a bit. Crude stocks too. And so one thing to keep in mind with all this is that if there's a variant that starts to spread in North America, one thing to keep in mind is that, entertainment industry, travel industry stocks will be the first to take it on the chin, because that's what happened last time. So keep that in mind, because we are hearing word about certain variants around the world that are either much more resistant or much more virulent, which means they spread faster and stuff. So there are variants out there. The longer people delay getting vaccines, the easier it is for variants to spring up, because it moves through the unvaccinated population and some genetic trigger goes and there's a new variation on the disease. So I like the travel industry right now. I like the entertainment industry right now. I think things look good. We just have to remember that we didn't wipe out the COVID-19 virus, and the potential for some kind of mutation, some kind of variant in it is actually quite high. And if it starts to spread in North America, that's going to reset the pieces on the chessboard.
Do you see anything happening with interest rates?
Well, we know that the Fed has said it's not doing anything on interest rates until 2023. Today is the start of a 2-day Fed meeting. We'll get the word from the Fed tomorrow if they're making any change. So that's on Wednesday. If they're making any change on what they want to do with interest rates. They won't say so, specifically, but we can read something in their language, stuff like that. I believe they're going to stick to their guns. I think they should be more concerned about it. I think they have 28 trillion not to be. They have 28 trillion reasons not to be, which is that in order to keep financing or service the debt, the U.S. debt, which is $28 trillion, they need interest rates to remain low. So they'll be dragged into any interest rate hikes kicking and screaming. It's not coming easy, and it's not coming soon.
Isn't it the international bond market that truly sets interest rates, not the local central bank?
It used to be that way. But now we sell much less of our debt overseas and we buy more of it ourselves, which is that's its own whole set of problems. But so we'll see how that works out, but I think that the Fed's trying to accomplish a lot by jawboning. We'll see how it works out for them longer term.
Sean, thank you so much for chatting with us.
Thanks. I had a great time.
My guest has been Sean Brodrick, Senior Editor at WeissRatings.com. If you have any questions for Sean or any of our other guests, we'll ask that question for you. You can send them to info@HoweStreet.com. Our YouTube channel is Talk Digital Network. Find us on Twitter @HoweStreet. We're also on Facebook. I'm Jim Goddard. Thank you for listening.
Comments made on HoweStreet.com radio are an expression of opinion only and should not be construed in any matter whatsoever as recommendations to buy or sell any financial instrument at any time. Available online at TalkDigitalNetwork.com. HoweStreet.com radio is a production of HoweStreet Media Incorporated.